Where's my insulin? I asked, staring at the empty shelf in our refrigerator. My stepmother, Diana, didn't even look up from her magazine. I threw it away. You're becoming too dependent on that stuff, Emma. My name is Emma Mitchell. I'm 23, and those words made my blood run cold. As a type 1 diabetic, insulin isn't a choice, it's survival. You did what? My voice shook as I turned to face her. Diana, I need that medication to live. She finally looked up, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the kitchen counter. Don't be so dramatic. Your father and I have been talking. You use this diabetes thing as a crutch. Always checking your blood sugar, always needing special food, always making everything about your condition. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My father had married Diana 8 months ago, and since then she'd made it her mission to fix everything she thought was wrong with me. But this was crossing a line I never imagined she'd cross. Where did you put it? I demanded, my hands starting to shake. Whether from anger or dropping blood sugar, I couldn't tell. Diana rolled her eyes and pointed to the sink. I poured it all down the drain an hour ago. Those vials were expensive, and your father's insurance shouldn't have to keep paying for them. It's time you learned to be stronger. My heart nearly stopped. 6 vials of insulin, gone. My emergency backup supply that I kept in my room. I'd used the last of it yesterday, planning to refill my prescription next week. You had no right, I whispered, pulling out my phone to check my continuous glucose monitor. 180 and rising. Without insulin, those numbers would keep climbing. I had every right, Diana snapped, standing up. I'm your mother now. You're my father's wife. I cut her off, already dialing the pharmacy. Not my mother. My mother would never do something this cruel. The pharmacy's automated message made my stomach sink. Our offices are closed for the holiday weekend. If this is an emergency. Right, Memorial Day weekend. Everything would be closed until Tuesday. My regular pharmacy, the backup pharmacy, all of it. I had maybe 12 hours before things got dangerous. Dad, I tried calling him next, but it went straight to voicemail. He was on a business trip in Seattle, probably in meetings. Diana smirked as I left a desperate message. He agrees with me, you know, she said, watching me pace. He's tired of all the attention you need, all the special treatment. When he married me, he thought he was getting a fresh start, not another round of dealing with your issues. My vision blurred with tears. This isn't about attention. Without insulin, I could die. Stop being dramatic, Diana waved her hand dismissively. Humans survive for thousands of years without insulin. A few days won't kill you. Think of it as a cleanse. I grabbed my keys, heading for the door. Maybe the emergency room could help. Diana's voice followed me. If you go running to the hospital, don't bother coming back. Your father and I are done enabling you. The drive to the hospital was terrifying. My hands were shaking worse now, my vision starting to blur around the edges. The glucose monitor beeped, 250 and climbing. The emergency room was packed. A holiday weekend meant accidents, injuries, and a waiting room full of people. Please, I begged the triage nurse, showing her my monitor. My stepmother threw away my insulin. I'm type 1 diabetic. I don't have any backup. The nurse's eyes widened as she looked at my readings. How long ago was your last dose? This morning, I whispered. But she poured out everything we had. She deliberately threw away your insulin? The nurse, her badge read Sarah, was already typing into her computer. And you have no access to backup medication. I shook my head, feeling lightheaded. She said I was too dependent on it, that I needed to toughen up. Nurse Sarah's face hardened. I need you to tell me exactly what happened. I'm documenting everything. She pressed a button, and another nurse appeared with a wheelchair. We're admitting you immediately. Your blood sugar is dangerously high and without insulin. I nodded, sinking into the wheelchair as the room started to spin. I know, I tried to tell her. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was Nurse Sarah saying firmly, "Don't worry, we're going to help you." And we're documenting every single detail of what she did. I didn't know it then, but those documentation notes would change everything. I woke up in the ICU, the steady beeping of machines surrounding me. Multiple IV lines ran into my arms, and through my blurred vision, I could make out the numbers on the monitor. 485. My blood sugar had skyrocketed to nearly fatal levels. Emma, a gentle voice called. Nurse Sarah was back, checking my vitals. You've been unconscious for almost 18 hours. We had to put you into a medically induced state to manage the diabetic ketoacidosis. 18 hours. My brain felt foggy, but I could hear voices arguing outside my room. One was unmistakably Diana's. "This is ridiculous," she was saying. "She's just trying to get attention." I made a parental decision. "Mrs. Mitchell," a stern male voice interrupted, "you made no such thing. You deliberately disposed of life-sustaining medication. Our patient could have died. She's my stepdaughter and that gives you no right to withhold medical necessities." The voice, which I now recognize as Dr. Thompson, my endocrinologist, cut in sharply. "We've documented everything. The nurses have detailed logs of Emma's condition when she arrived, her near-fatal blood sugar levels, and your admission that you intentionally destroyed her insulin." I tried to sit up, but my body felt like lead. Nurse Sarah gently pushed me back. "Rest," she said softly. "We've contacted your father. He's flying back from Seattle." Through the glass walls of my ICU room, I could see Diana's perfectly composed face starting to crack. Another person had joined the conversation, someone in a police uniform. "Mrs. Mitchell," the officer said, "we need to discuss the implications of your actions." Deliberately withholding life-sustaining medication. I was trying to help her. Diana's voice rose hysterically. "She uses this diabetes thing to manipulate everyone, always needing special treatment, special food, special attention. She needs those things to live." Dr. Thompson's voice was ice cold. "Let me be very clear about what your actions did. When Emma arrived, her blood sugar was at 250. By the time we got her stabilized, it had reached 485. Do you understand what that means?" Diana's face had lost some of its color. "She's fine now, isn't she?" "She nearly died," Nurse Sarah spoke up, stepping out of my room. "We have detailed logs of every hour she was in crisis. Her organs were starting to fail. If she had waited even a few more hours to come in." I closed my eyes, remembering Diana's threat about not coming back if I went to the hospital. She had been willing to let me die just to prove her point. The police officer was writing something in his notebook. "Mrs. Mitchell, we're treating this as a case of medical abuse. The hospital staff has provided extensive documentation of both Emma's condition and your statements." "You can't be serious." Diana's voice cracked. "I'm her stepmother. I was trying to teach her independence." "By destroying her insulin?" Dr. Thompson asked incredulously. "That's not teaching independence. That's endangering her life. As her doctor, I'm legally obligated to report this." I heard footsteps rushing down the hall, and then my father's voice. "Emma, where is she? What happened?" Opening my eyes, I saw him burst into view, still in his business suit, looking panicked. When he saw me through the glass, his face went pale. "What did you do?" He turned to Diana, his voice shaking. "They told me. They said you threw away her insulin?" Diana's composure finally broke. "I was trying to help. You said yourself she was too dependent." "I said she was dependent on us for rides to her doctor's appointments," my father shouted. "Not that she was dependent on the medication that keeps her alive." "How could you? What were you thinking?" "Mr. Mitchell," the police officer interrupted, "we need to discuss pressing charges." My father's head snapped up. "Charges?" "Medical abuse is a serious offense," Dr. Thompson explained. "The nurses have documented everything, including Mrs. Mitchell's statements about intentionally destroying Emma's medication and threatening her if she sought medical help." I watched through the glass as my father staggered back, looking between Diana and me. For 8 months, he had let her subtle cruelty slide, always making excuses, always trying to keep the peace. But now, seeing me in the ICU, the reality of what she'd done seemed to hit him all at once. "Get out," he said to Diana, his voice quiet but firm. "David, please." "Get out," he roared, making everyone jump. "You nearly killed my daughter. Get out of here before I let them arrest you right now." Diana's face crumpled, but for once I saw real fear in her eyes as she looked at the police officer's notebook, the nurse's documentation, and my father's fury. Without another word, she turned and fled down the hallway. My father came into my room, tears in his eyes as he took my hand. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she would. I never thought." I squeezed his hand weakly, the IV lines shifting. "I tried to tell you," I whispered, "about how she treated me." He nodded, looking broken. "I know. I should have listened, but I promise you she'll never come near you again." Outside the room, I could hear Dr. Thompson and the police officer discussing charges, the nurse's documentation serving as evidence of Diana's deliberate endangerment of my life. She had thought she could bully me into giving up my dependency on insulin. Instead, she had given the authorities all the evidence they needed. 3 months after my ICU stay, I sat in the courthouse, watching Diana's perfectly maintained facade crumble as the prosecutor presented the evidence against her. The nurse's detailed documentation was devastating, hour-by-hour logs of my deteriorating condition, my blood sugar levels, and most damaging of all, Diana's own recorded statements. The defendant stated, and I quote from the nursing logs, the prosecutor read, "I poured it down the drain to teach her a lesson." When informed about the life-threatening nature of withholding insulin, she responded, "She needs to toughen up." Diana sat at the defendant's table, her designer outfit and carefully styled hair a stark contrast to her pale, drawn face. Her lawyer had advised her to take a plea deal, but she refused, convinced she could explain away her actions as concerned parenting. My father sat beside me, his hand gripping mine as we listened to Dr. Thompson's testimony. In my 20 years of practicing medicine, I've never seen such a deliberate and dangerous attempt to withhold life-sustaining medication from a type 1 diabetic patient. The evidence kept mounting. The hospital security footage showing Diana threatening to throw me out if I sought medical help. The pharmacy records proving she had prevented my prescription refills by claiming I no longer needed them. Even text messages to my father where she complained about my attention-seeking behavior regarding my diabetes. During a break in the proceedings, my father turned to me. "I filed for divorce last week," he said quietly. "I should have done it the day you ended up in the ICU." I nodded, remembering how he changed since that day. No more dismissing my concerns, no more trying to keep the peace at my expense. He'd moved us out of the house we'd shared with Diana, helped me set up a secure medical alert system, and most importantly, started listening when I talked about my health needs. When Diana took the stand, her attempt at appearing concerned and maternal fell flat. "I was trying to help Emma become more independent," she insisted. "All teenagers need to learn." "Ms. Mitchell," the prosecutor interrupted, "Emma is 23 years old and has been managing her type 1 diabetes successfully for years. Are you suggesting that deliberately destroying her insulin was helping her? She was too dependent on the medication that keeps her alive?" The prosecutor's voice was sharp. "The same medication that, according to these medical records, prevented her from going into organ failure?" Diana's composure finally broke. "You don't understand. She was always making everything about her diabetes. Special meals, special schedules, constant monitoring. I just wanted her to stop using it as an excuse." "An excuse for what, Mrs. Mitchell? For staying alive?" The jury's verdict came back in less than 2 hours. Guilty of medical abuse and reckless endangerment. As the judge prepared to announce the sentence, Diana finally looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since the trial began. "Emma," she pleaded, "tell them I was trying to help. Tell them you understand." I stood up, my continuous glucose monitor visible on my arm, a reminder of what she tried to take from me. "I understand perfectly," I said clearly. "You were willing to let me die to prove a point, to show that you had control, but you forgot something important." "What?" she whispered. "Those nurses didn't just save my life with their medical care. They saved me from you with their documentation. Every cruel word, every dangerous action, all recorded and verified. You can't deny what you did anymore." The judge sentenced Diana to 3 years in prison, with additional orders for psychiatric evaluation and mandatory education about chronic medical conditions. She collapsed in tears as they led her away, but I felt no sympathy. Her tears were for herself, not for what she'd done to me. Afterward, in the courthouse hallway, Nurse Sarah was waiting. She testified about my condition when I was brought in, her detailed notes providing crucial evidence. "Thank you," I told her, hugging her tightly. "Your documentation made this possible." She smiled. "We protect our patients, not just with medical care, but with truth. Nobody should ever have to fear having their medication taken away." My father approached her, his eyes wet. "I can never thank you enough, not just for saving Emma's life, but for helping bring Diana to justice." That evening at home, I looked at my new insulin supply, safely stored and carefully monitored. My father had installed a small medical fridge in my room, with a security lock that only he and I could access. It seemed extreme, but after Diana, we weren't taking any chances. Never again, he promised, watching me check my blood sugar levels. I'll never let anyone hurt you like that again. I smiled, knowing he meant it. Diana had thought she could bully me into giving up my dependency on insulin. Instead, she'd lost everything. Her marriage, her freedom, her carefully constructed image of the concerned stepmother. And I'd gained something unexpected. A father who finally understood that protecting me meant believing me, supporting me, and standing up to anyone who tried to deny my right to live safely with my condition. My continuous glucose monitor beeped. 120, perfectly normal. Just another day of being dependent on insulin. Exactly as I should be, exactly as I had every right to be.